Welcome to the wonderful Iverson house. This house is the oldest frame building in Ephraim and the oldest frame building in Door County. It is called the Iverson house because of Andreas Iverson, who settled the village of Ephraim. And it all began back in 1853. He arrived here to set up a new Moravian church, a new village that he named Ephraim, and that meant bountiful, fruitful. His trip over here was very painful. They walked across the ice, and when he got the loan, and actually it was not a loan. He got money from Bethlehem, and he decided that this was going to be the place that he would settle. The home started building almost immediately, and he declared that he wanted the biggest home of wood in Ephraim. The others, and he was supported by that statement by his friends that accompanied him, and they all said, yes, you should have. And he picked this site because it had a beautiful view of Green Bay. It had he had seen the planting of black walnut trees, which are in front of the Iverson, and they are way over 200 years old right now. The outside of the Iverson house has never been painted, only whitewashed. The inside is a calcimine paint that is used. This is a picture of Andreas Iverson. He had eyes that seemed always to me in pictures that I saw of him that were very penetrating. Now, he was the first minister, of course, to live in the Iverson house. The second minister was J.J. Grunfeld. And the third and last minister to live here with his lovely wife Anna was Anders Peterson. Now, let me, while we are still in this room, show you exactly what the Iverson looked like. This part of the Iverson would have been an add-on. This tiny little place where you see a smokestack coming out of probably was part of a summer kitchen, and this is the first church that was moved up to the site next to the Iverson, the Ephraim Moravian Church. And our reflection today will be about the Iverson home and basically about Patterson and his wife named Anna. Now follow me and watch your step, because the steps are not uniform. Now this room probably was the very first gathering place for religious purposes. If you look up at the ceiling, you will see wide beams. And wide beams in Norway meant public place. There are also wide beams in the adjacent room, which probably was a crying room or a room where mothers sat with their children. But this room probably held anywhere up to 30 parishioners at one time, and was used until the church was built next door. But going back a little bit, this actually was a residence of Frank and Anna Valentine. No relationship to the Valentine family in Ephraim. And they rented this. This was considered a very big home because most of the buildings in Ephraim were little log cabins. And it was grandeur back then. Now, Frank's wife's name was Anna. And Anna was very, very talented. This is her sewing machine. She loved to sew. And she in turn became very friendly with the second Anna Patterson, because let's face it, we have two Annas in the Iverson house. You can imagine two women by the same name, but they got along beautifully because each one had something to offer to the other one. Now let's move along and come into this room. And as I said before, this was probably the crying room. It is portrayed for museum purposes today as another bedroom, which would have been the Valentine's bedroom. You will notice that every room has a lamp in its window. Every room has a pitcher and a bowl for washing purposes. And out in the back is their outhouse, and under the beds are their, call it what you want, but it's chamber pot. Now, as you look through this room, you'll see there isn't a closet. In fact, there is not a closet in any of the rooms. People stored their things in the beautiful trunks that they brought with them, or they hung them on racks. And most people did not have an awful lot of personal belongings to bring with them, so they never had a closet. Now we're going to move out of this room, and we are moving to actually the front door of the Iverson house. There is an opening that is glass, and again, a lamp was placed there. That when that lamp was not burning, the nearby neighbors would know something was amiss. So that lamp burned all the time. And incidentally, all the windows in the Iverson are the original. We call them rolled glass. You can call them wavy. But when Lila and Jim Peterson and their Field Walker family bought the Iverson house, they stored the windows in the basement because they knew for preservation purposes, they knew someday they wanted this to go to the foundation. Okay, let's move through here and open this door, and this leads to what probably was the front door of how people came to church. Outside this door is, I'm going to open it up. Let's come out here. This property right through here was called Willow Street, and it's how they entered the Iverson home. It had beautiful plantings, but that street, called Willow Street, was discontinued by the village. Now, as long as we're outside, let us focus on this beautiful black walnut tree. There are two of them. Oh, they are over 200 years old. And the scene, if we had been looking back in 1884, would not be like this. All of the trees, cedar logs, cedar trees, any tree that was in front of these were sawed down. They needed to build their log homes. So the view out of this back porch was magnificent. and you're facing west, and that view comes into play with the other rooms that I'm going to show you now. There isn't, watch it. Every step in here is just a little bit different. You have to be careful. While we are right here, this is the stairway to the upper part of the Iverson house. We do not let any of the visitors go up there due to the fact that our insurance company says no. But on the left-hand side, it was the minister's study, and there are 2 other bedrooms. Let's move along through here. The church, rose mauling and folk art had not begun, but these trunks are gorgeous. And I have a place in my home that one of these trunks would fit, but they'd know exactly where to find it. Okay, let's step into here. This is the parlor of Anna and Anders Peterson. This is Anna. Anna was very highly educated. She taught music. She gave piano lessons. And since she learned from the other Anna how to sew, she gave Anna Valentine music lessons. Now, and incidentally, this is an older, a very much older Reverend Peterson. Now that I have the pictures up, this was Anna's original music stand, and that was donated and left here for future minister, of which there were none, because a parsonage was built next door. The Pattersons were the last family and last minister to live in the Iverson house. Now I would like to point out this folding table. It was donated by Reverend Gronfeld, and it was actually made by Reverend Iverson. And while I'm talking about that, Reverend Iverson also made the pulpit in the Ephraim Moravian Church, which is right next door. But its beauty, it is like it was made yesterday. He was a remarkable man. He had many talents. He was very determined in everything he did. And Reverend Iverson was here, I believe it was only 11 years. And then he went on. Okay, this room has the most magnificent view of the shoreline. Across is Peninsula State Park, and you'll have to look at it with open eyes because it's every year the trees get larger and it's a little bit harder to see. And again, the rolled glass windows. The parlor was set up the way Anna Patterson really wanted it to look like her mother's own home. And Anna was very, very homesick. She also brought a lot of her finery things with her, but because the congregation was so poor that she was afraid to put out too many things that showed that she did have many things that she brought with her. She also had a sewing class, of which Valentine, the other Anna, conducted here. She also taught music lessons here. She had what we would have called women's fellowship in this room too. And the hard times have been all put together with 60 letters. And the book is called Door County Letters. And it is a very inexpensive book. I believe it's only $12.95 and available from the Ephraim Foundation if you would like a copy of it. But many, many wonderful letters that she wrote to her mother. And one of the things that I had to laugh when I was reading, but actually it shouldn't have been laughed, but she said, "Mother dear, please send me any recipes on how to fix fish. If it's boiled, if it's how I can learn to can them, how many different recipes you must know, Mother dear, to send all your recipes to me, because we see very little meat. Occasionally the farmers from up in the German settlement will bring us a chicken, a piece of meat, but believe me, I have to be very careful with what I can purchase for food and what I need to save for a winter that absolutely, I know I have been told, can be a very rough winter. And of course it was. She talks about her days of the week, and one day that was the happiest day for Anna was the fact that she could iron her clothing and her husband's clothing, and she stayed warm all day long. And she loved the day, and then she learned to bake, and she said she wasn't sure how it would turn out, but she surprised herself. And they did have a cow that they had to bring up into the upstairs because it was so cold that all their food froze, the water in their cistern froze, that they did not want to lose that cow, because that cow produced milk and butter. And she said butter that was so sweet. I'd never tasted butter like that before. And incidentally, in her writing in her letters, she said that the hay was stored upstairs so that if they had to bring the animals up, that they could be fed up there. And I remember many, many years ago, the third grade from our local school, Gibraltar High School, came to the Iverson, and when I told these third graders that they had to bring the animals up into the house so they would not, they needed those animals some warmth, and they needed the animals not to freeze down in the basement. I looked around at this group of third graders, and almost everyone had their nose pinched, and I did have to laugh. I saw the humor in it. They said, "Oh, animals upstairs." And then what happens when, and I said, you know what happens when. But anyway, the Iverson has been absolutely a wonder. I was in here in the late 1950s when Lila and Jim Field owned it. And yes, the furnishings were different, but you never knew that they had electricity. And if you look around as we proceed, you will not see any outlet that is visible. And there was no electricity back then. Another thing, I can remember a storm rolled across the bay. It got black lightning, thunder, and I really had not been here in a storm. And I'm thinking, oh my, where? Because there are different steps went to each room. And a request went in for a flashlight. And believe me, it happened more than once. I can also say that during a tour in the Iverson, all of a sudden I heard the boom, 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 boom upstairs. And I'm thinking, oh my, Well, yes. There was a squirrel out there rolling black walnuts in the upstairs. And it certainly got the attention of the guests that were touring the Iverson house. Now let's move along into this other room. Oh, and before I do, most rooms had a wood stove. When it was too cold upstairs in their bedroom, they removed the stove to put it up for added warmth upstairs. The winters were harsh back then, and it seems like, well, yes, global change, they have changed. We don't have those 35-degree temperatures that I remember. When I was here, I lived in Ephraim 63 years, and it seems that winters have mellowed, but they absolutely had to be pioneer, the women especially, pioneer women to exist in the Iverson house. I don't think I would qualify. Now, we're moving into another room, and guess what? It's the third Anna. And let me show you a picture. Now we have three Annas living in the Iverson. This is Anna Peterson, and it happens to be Reverend Patterson's sister. She came here to help out, but she became very ill. And it turned out, and this was her bedroom, and it turned out that she needed a lot of care. But she too wrote letters to her family talking about the beautiful views out her bedroom window. Now again, a little bit more modern chamber pot, no closets, and all of the beds had the rope that you will see underneath it, tied it together. The setup of the Iverson right now is as close as it could be to the time when the three Annas lived in this house together. Now we are going to move through this doorway, and again, there is a step that is not in conformity with the others, so watch your step coming down here. Now I have a surprise for you. I use this. It's a very safe place. And this is your wonderful pantry. But the surprise is that I'm going to open up this trapdoor, and it's going to lead down. There is a ladder. We're not allowed to go down it, but there is a ladder to the basement. Let me show you. Now, if you'd like to go in and take a look, this is how they were able to get to their basement in very bad weather. That they could go down, they could feed their cow, they could milk their cow, they could get things from, there is a root cellar down there, and bring up any of the vegetables that they had stored for winter. And this is a beautiful, beautiful size pantry. Now, check it later. I'll return this to my hiding place. And I do have another surprise for you. and that is right here. This is their sister. And there's also a ladder that leads down. And the cistern collected all of the rainwater. Now when that bad weather set in, they had to go down to the bay, which is Green Bay, and chop a hole in the ice and bring up their water. Not only for cooking, for washing, for cleanliness, for everything. I'll just put the chair back. And again, as you look out, magnificent view. This is a very, very old high chair. And I would imagine the child that sat in that height had to be tied to the rungs on the back of it. But isn't it lovely? Now, I talked about Door County letters. This is what the book looks like. It is a very fast reading book. I could not put it down. I've read it several times to refresh my memory. And the cover of this book has been done by our local artist, Charles, we call him Chick, Peterson. Now, over here is a little area where they named their towels. I do not know the I know one was a knife towel, one was they had towels for different metal or glass. One was washcloth, one was a knife cloth, one was a glass cloth, but it's all in German. Their bread and their was mixed in a big wooden mixing bowl that is under that stand. And I will tell you a little bit about the corner over here. There is a Moravian star. There also is a Moravian beeswax candle, which is used at Christmas time. Everybody is given a beeswax candle, and we do have lit candles. We also initiated the little pin for children that were very, very young. But sometime during the course of the year, we have what is called a love feast. And a love feast consists of either Moravian buns, as I am showing you here, or it can be a Moravian cookie, or it can be Moravian coffee cake, sugar bread, and women at special occasions will put on the outfit that you see here. We have many of them up in our closets at the Moravian church. Now I know that this woman is a married woman. You know how I know that? She has blue ribbon in her bodice. If she was a young girl, the ribbon would be red. If she was a widow, it would be white. And if she was an unmarried woman, it would be pink. No provision for a divorced woman, however. The we do not wear this type of a bonnet. It's usually like a lace doily with a hat pin in it. And the men wore black trousers, a white shirt, and they carry the heavy trays that have heavy mugs in it as well, of either hot chocolate, cold chocolate, lemonade if it's a very hot day. And we did have a man that many years ago made Moravian coffee. There is no such thing as Moravian coffee. He laced it with as much sugar and cream that all the cups were coming back empty. So he was given another job after all the years of enduring his wonderful coffee making. And I just thought I would add that. And they would bring the monks down the buns or even sugar cake or whatever was served. And it's called love feast because you sat and talked with your neighbors in the pew on either side of you. When everything was completed, the mugs were picked up and the service went on. It could be in the beginning of the service, it could be middle or end. It was whatever the minister chose. But a very lovely custom of the Ephraim Moravian Church and all Moravian churches throughout the United States and in foreign countries. The Anderson store is open for you to view. The Goodletson Cabin, Pioneer Schoolhouse, they are other museums that belong to the Ephraim Foundation, as well as the Anderson Barn, down, of course, Anderson Lane. And if you feel that you would like to visit, we highly encourage it and we welcome you. Now, would you like to go down and see the barn that is underneath this home? I will get my keys and let's go down there if you would. All right, that's fine with me. They caught the water. There is a trough that went in to fill it for their system, and they use that for washing. They use it for everything they possibly could. Now let's follow me, but be careful in coming down. It is a stone walk. There are loose stones. For a minute if you would like. Now, I am very short, but you must duck your head. This is a very, very low entrance. Now this is the basement of the Iverson home. They housed their cow, if they were affluent enough to own a horse, and incidentally, Reverend Peterson did have a horse by the name of Jim. That horse ruled the minister. It had a mind of its own. Many times, he was not told, when he finally had enough money put together to get a horse, that the horse did have a mean side of him. And it was too bad because he finally at the end was able, but that was the only means of transportation, was by a horse. Otherwise they were walking everywhere. And unfortunately he got a horse that had a bad temper. Now, if you look over here, you will see the big ladder that you saw up in the pantry. It leads right down to this basement that they could go down in bad weather. And behind it is a root cellar, way in the back. And their washing machines were very primitive. But yet, Anna always said, oh, the warm water on wash days felt good. And in America, they have a bluing that you could leave in your wash basin all night and won't hurt the clothes or destroy the clothes. So she was finding many different positive things about life, which was extremely difficult. The door to your north would be right below the porch that we were standing on, just as another way of going back and forth. But this is so primitive that it is, I am amazed every time I come down here. Okay, I just really would like to point out and take a good look at the different, this completely stone, alder kind of is, I should not say completely stone, because you can dig a hole to see if you have beautiful soil for a garden, and if you can dig a hole right alongside of it and find a great amount of stone. That's why everybody that was a farmer here, everybody that planted anything, did a lot of picking, and that's why you see a lot of stone fences in Door County. But again, life was hard, and isn't it wonderful that we have this memory in the form of the Iverson house for all to enjoy. Thank you.